Now I'd like to take this left hand of mine.
Yes.
And place it under your rib cage, fairly close to the right breast, but in keeping a safe distance.
That is acceptable.
There we go.
That's very nice.
For most of film history, intimate scenes between actors have been lumped in with every other aspect of a performance.
Nobody ever kissed me the way you do.
If you had any kind of scene involving something close and personal, it was up to you, your fellow actor, and the director to figure it out.
Okay, these two people, they really love each other, right? And we want to see that, especially in the kiss.
On one end of the spectrum, it could be something relatively trivial, played for comedy.
Okay, sorry about that. Boob grace. That was accidental.
Whether it involved another actor,
Welcome to our home. What's left of it?
or, just you.
Well, we'll just tell your mother that we ate it all.
Then you've got nudity. What kind of project is it? Screwball comedy? Drama? Fantasy? Like what are you showing?
I got a surprise for you.
What are you not showing?
Don't forget these.
Oh, thanks.
For how long? Why? Is this just gratuitous nudity for the sake of it? What if you were misled into thinking you weren't showing much of anything, but the camera saw a whole lot more and you found out after the fact?
And my director said, "Can you hand me your underpants? Because we're seeing them in the scene, and you shouldn't have underpants on, but we won't see anything." And I said, "Sure."
And then there's
Sex. Where were we?
is it important to the story or not? What are we doing exactly? Can I touch you here? Hand on crotch with pants on, acceptable?
Am I offending you?
Yeah, yikes. Maybe I could stuff a sock or something in there so it's not so hands-on. How should we kiss?
I know.
Are you okay with a little tongue? A lot of tongue. Maybe that's too much tongue. All right, well, maybe we should choreograph every single step to this like a dance and make it as clinical as possible.
You're going to ask Dan if it's okay to put your hand on his shoulder.
Can I put my hand on your shoulder?
But then do we lose spontaneity? Maybe let's just wing it, right? Like, let's jump right in. Maybe that's better because it'll look more real. But what if the guy involved innocently gets a little too excited? That's a normal physical reaction, right?
And it was like, this is turning into a real sex scene. This is kind of hot. Even though we're trying to be funny, it's kind of hot.
I mean, is that understandable, or is that like a lawsuit or something?
Man number 3, I can see her.
All right, tuck it. Just tuck it up.
What if you've agreed to do an actual thing on camera, like real, but the guy involved is also the writer, director, and producer, and you kind of have a complex past relationship-wise with him anyway? Is there an uncomfortable power dynamic here?
Now, we're gonna play this nice and close, just like in the movies, okay?
Is there a weird age difference to take into consideration? What if this particular act in the scene isn't consensual? How do we all feel about this? Well, maybe it would be better to have stand-ins for the more graphic stuff. Is someone having second thoughts about something? Look, is everyone comfortable with what we are about to do? This seems like a lot of stuff to think about as an actor or as a director. Now, what if all these messy concerns and questions and responsibilities were taken care of by one single person? Enter the intimacy coordinator. This is a relatively new profession in film and television, like the past maybe 10 years or so. And it's one that's either been praised or laughed at by male and female actors alike. I'll admit, when I first heard about it, I was skeptical. My interest was piqued recently after watching Florence Pugh on Louis Theroux's podcast talk about her experiences with intimacy coordinators.
My view is changing about it as well because I'm now having fantastic experiences with intimacy coordinators. However, that being said, I've also had like a example where someone just made it so weird and so awkward and really wasn't helpful and kind of was just like wanting to be a part of the set in a way that wasn't helpful. And I think it's a job that's still figuring itself out.
Where did this job come from? What are the pros and cons? Is it necessary? Now, I know talking about sex in general it's pretty boring.
Weimar, this is for your benefit. Would you kindly wake up?
But I'll try to make this as stimulating as possible. if that's all right with you.
I'm gonna fill you up. What? I'm gonna fill you up.
Okay, just let me do the talking.
Let's take an in-depth look at the role of intimacy coordinators in film and television. Now, some of you, like me, might have a vague idea of what an intimacy coordinator does, but I figured it'd be a good idea to just briefly go over the basics. In one respect, an intimacy coordinator is like a stunt choreographer. In fact, that's like the comparison that is made across the board. If people have stunts in a scene, like a fight scene, they are choreographed so that everybody is safe. So why not do the same thing for intimate scenes? So they'll plan it out, beat by beat, the actions of an intimate scene, while balancing the comfort of the actors with the director's vision.
So we know what the scene is, so we know we don't need to check groin touch, so we're going to take groin completely off the table.
To make things even more comfortable, they'll usually have a kind of intimacy kit. Like they'll just bring this big old bag full of things like modesty garments meant to cover up specific parts of the body, improvised physical barriers to put in between the actors, to prevent contact, things like a cut-up yoga mat or a partially deflated Pilates ball. This is all kind of cool improvised stuff that they've come up with organically.
So they'll never be in contact with each other. This is a physical barrier that's placed between them. I used a Pilates ball like this one for raw piece for the actors there, and they loved it. They were like, oh, this makes it so much easier. And I'm like, good, I'm glad that it's working for you guys.
Is it taped to one actor or is it just loose?
No, they place it where they need to for that particular position.
They're also the ones to oversee closed set protocols, making sure that only the essential crew is present during one of these scenes. And they'll keep an eye on what's being filmed just so that it matches what the actors agreed to do beforehand.
Her areola is clearly visible.
Yeah, looks great.
Be that as it may, we can't actually do this.
But probably most important is an intimacy coordinator's role as an advocate for the actors involved and as a kind of liaison between them and the director. If they're doing their job right, they're taking the awkwardness out of the room and protecting everybody, actors and directors alike.
So many directors saying to me, before the guidelines that gives a professional structure, a director would say, I feel if I really engage with intimate content, if I really start talking in detail about what I want, I'll feel that I'm the one that's considered a bit weird and a bit of a pervert. And then people are just embarrassed, aren't they, to really openly engage with the intimate content. Everybody has a different lived experience, different cultures, different religions that have different relationships to how openly we can talk about our intimate lives. So that has a big impact. So without the intimacy on set and guidelines, it was the elephant in the room.
But where did this role come from? In my research, it was kind of interesting to notice that it wasn't necessarily one specific person who started it all, but it sort of began to naturally emerge around 2015.
When I started sort of reaching out, this work was already happening in like tiny little pockets all over. So it was amazing to make contact with, lots of other people who were also looking at this work.
This is Lizzy Talbot. She was a fight choreographer for stage productions for years, and she began to notice a need for it with her actors. While her actors were confident across the board with any physical stunts, the same didn't apply to more intimate scenes.
That's when you could see people getting very tense. They would be awkward, they would shut down, there would be just such a disconnect between the two. So I just put out a post on like an actors group. I was like, hey, just tell me your experiences of intimate scenes, like the good, the bad, the ugly, I want to hear it all. I was overwhelmed by the sheer number of the responses.
Now, around the same time, just on the other side of the globe, actress turned stunt coordinator Alicia Rodis had spent years unknowingly developing the skill set for her future career and began to notice the same need from her actors that she was working with.
I started to get really into physical theater. I started to really get into stage combat. Like I said, I grew up dancing and doing some martial arts. So that was a natural progression for me. I started eventually working for NYU and helping out with stunts on their student films. And I had a student come to me and, we were doing some of the stunt stuff. And she said, I've got a sex scene coming up. How do we handle it? And I was like, well, let's look at what SAG-AFTRA has, what our processes are that we have. And I look and I'm like, there's nothing. I was like, okay, let's treat this like the stunt we just did. Let's talk to the actors ahead of time. Let's make sure we know exactly what our plan is. Let's have padding. Let's have, everything set so that then we can, and make sure we coach it so that it's coached up just like we coached up the violence in your last film.
This story seemed to be occurring everywhere, and certain figures seemed to be in the right place at the right time with the right set of skills. Whether it was Ita O'Brien's vast resume as a dancer and acting teacher specializing in movement, or Amanda Blumenthal's work as a sex and relationship coach.
So much of the work that I do is centered around attunement and being able to relate with the performers that I'm working with and reading what's happening for them, not just in terms of what they're saying, but also what's their body saying, what's their vocal tone saying.
The pieces were in place for intimacy coordinators to emerge, and key figures even began developing their own organizations and rules that would eventually lay out all of the pillars of intimacy coordination. Alicia Rodis got in touch with someone named Tonya Sina, who had published a thesis on intimacy direction back in 2006. That's how far back it went. And she's like essentially the originator of the concept. And the two of them formed Intimacy Directors International, now known as IDC, Intimacy Directors and Coordinators.
We started to get more attention, and then Me Too happened. And that was when the wave just crested. And people were like, okay.
And there are several organizations like this, depending on the part of the country or just a completely separate country. They have a different one in the UK, they have a different one in Australia, all over the world, essentially. And with that, these burgeoning intimacy coordinators started getting calls. Alicia Rodis became the first official intimacy coordinator in film and television when she was brought on to work on the HBO series The Deuce, a period drama about the adult entertainment industry in the 1970s and 80s. Then you got Amanda Blumenthal. She began working on spicy scenes in the first season of The White Lotus. Lizzy Talbot was tapped to help with intimate scenes in Bridgerton, which, I don't know, I've never seen the show, but all I've ever heard about peripherally is how spicy the scenes are. It's like what everybody talks about. And Ita O'Brien, she received massive praise for helping create realistic and respectful depictions of young sex in normal people. That was another one. Everyone talked about the love scenes in that one. And to this day, intimacy coordinators aren't legally required, but they are strongly encouraged on SAG-AFTRA projects. And there are certain networks that they've made it a rule, like HBO. From The Deuce onwards, they've made every one of their shows with intimacy coordinators.
I have been so grateful for the development of this new trend of the intimacy coordinator.
I think I thought it would sort of be interfering in terms of letting my ability to let go, which I feel like is something you have to do in a sex scene. But it's orchestrated more, makes it easier to let go.
I found the intimacy coordinator to be the first time I've ever looked at those scenes as acting scenes, because we were suddenly breaking them down beat by beat. And It was now like, wait, so who's the aggressor? And is it awkward, or is it really, are they connected, or do we find a connection, or does it start sloppy? Yeah. It became an opportunity for more storytelling than just a little bit of an erotic escape.
Now, what's also interesting is to hear the reactions from actors in the industry, which have been, from what I've seen, on the whole, pretty positive. Emma Stone on Poor Things, Zendaya on Challengers, and When I May Destroy You creator Michaela Cole won a BAFTA, she thanked Ita O'Brien personally in her acceptance speech.
Thank you for your existence in our industry, for making the space safe, for creating physical, emotional, and professional boundaries so that we can make work about exploitation, loss of respect, about abuse of power, without being exploited or abused in the process.
Now, understandably, there have been some actors, usually older, who were supportive but didn't quite see the point in working with them personally. Gwyneth Paltrow declined using one when working with Timothée Chalamet on Marty Supreme. Mikey Madison did the same with Honora, as did Daniel Craig on Queer.
I was curious what the experience was like.
Great. We had a very sensitive person who was there to keep an eye on us, but the two of us were grown-ups. It's like, we knew what we wanted to try and achieve. We had Luca guiding us, and we laughed a lot. And that's the way you deal with it. You kind of like keep it as light as possible and then try and make it as real as possible.
So what's interesting already is that you don't have to work with one if you don't want to. And in Daniel Craig's defense, he did play James Bond for 15 years, and he'd performed in a lot of scenes in or around the bedroom.
What makes you think this is my first time? Oh, Mr. Bond.
He probably felt very comfortable in that environment. Some actors would prefer to do this, just, hey, I'm good, I don't need to work with one. But sometimes they give it a try later on, and they love the experience. Like Maggie Gyllenhaal when she was working on The Deuce.
Then Alicia came, who's our intimacy coordinator. And the second season, I have to be honest, I was like, great. I'm so glad she's there for the younger actresses. I have been doing this forever. Just like, I don't know that I need any help. It used to be, and I've been doing sex scenes since Secretary, right? Or maybe even a tiny bit before that. It's almost 20 years. And it used to be, you just figured out how to deal with it.
Then when the third season rolled around, she had a lot of scenes, a lot of spiciness, and she decided to work with Alicia, and she really enjoyed the experience.
She was amazing. Amazing.
How so?
I mean, in every way. Basically the thing is, for me, I'm not particularly concerned about nudity. I think nudity is a really interesting way of communicating things on film. I am concerned about actual contact with another person, especially somebody who I don't know. Or season 1 with Candy. I mean, I was in bed with so many different men, and I wanted there to be a real physical barrier between us. And so we had to, we cut up a yoga mat to make this kind of barrier, and we put it in a pillowcase, and whatever, we sorted it out. Alicia came with 10 different options.
Then there are some actors who have had this kind of negative knee-jerk reaction to the whole concept. Sean Bean said he felt it could, quote, spoil the spontaneity. Kim Basinger mentioned not being keen on the idea of, quote, another person in the room. And Michael Douglas likened it to, quote, executives taking control away from filmmakers. Sir Ian McKellen seemed skeptical about it when talking specifically about the intimacy coordinator's place in the world of theater.
But I can imagine there are situations when you have to be careful and people find it difficult to be intimate, and therefore a coordinator is just the thing. But why can't it be the director who does that? Why has it got to be somebody who's been trained in how to do it? This has been a huge change, and it's a little bit of beef for me, because with all these names of people doing all these jobs which were previously seemed to have taken care of themselves.
Now, I don't know where you guys stand on this stuff, but I just want to say it can be pretty easy to dismiss or demonize anyone criticizing the importance of intimacy coordinators. In my view, these actors and others have brought up valid points and questions that I also had when I first started learning about all this. So let's take a page from the Intimacy Coordinator Guidelines and let's openly communicate about it. As far as I can tell, there seem to be 3 major criticisms of intimacy coordinators, the first of which is one of the most important aspects of film and TV production: time.
And cut.
That's a cut.
You're working against the clock, trying not to fall behind, and the argument here is that bringing in someone to specifically go through a sex scene is you're just bringing too many cooks into the kitchen and it'll make the shoot day longer. There is a specific circumstance where this would be the case. So if there are any intimate scenes or nudity in a project, an actor will work with their reps and a lawyer to put on paper every specific thing that they are comfortable or not comfortable doing. This is called a nudity rider.
And it will be spelled out.
Yes.
To the point we'll say...
Yes. Not show, will show. Everybody has to be aware of what's being shot. So I wouldn't, for example, go to set having just said, I don't mind my bum being on camera, without knowing what their shot is. Because if their shot is then to actually put the camera here and I'm bending over, that's not something that I'd ever agree to.
And that's just for nudity. For the actual simulated sex involved, there's a separate simulated sex rider that details exactly everything that will occur within the scene. Now, let's say an actor arrives on set and either they or another actor or the director have an idea that requires them to show or do more than they've agreed to. That's perfectly fine. The nudity rider just needs to be changed. But there's a little bit of an extra wrinkle there.
Okay, so let's change the nudity rider.
It takes at least 48 hours.
Okay, so I'm not allowed to show my body?
You realize how f***ing annoying and insane that sounds.
It's actually very progressive. It's to make sure she doesn't feel pressured.
Now, this is all a fictionalized clip I'm showing here from the HBO series The Idol. Things are a bit heightened, but what they're saying here is actually true, according to intimacy coordinator and influencer Jessica Steinrock, when she reacted to the accuracy of this particular scene.
They're being completely upfront about how a change in the nudity rider takes at least 48 hours, and this is so actors have time to consider and no one can be pressured on set to do something that they don't want to do. If the actress was okay showing her chest, then my question is why did she or her agents push so hard for a nudity rider that was as restrictive as it is?
As far as I can tell, this is the only aspect of an intimacy coordinator's role that would actually hold up production for any reason. In fact, according to Elle McAlpine, who served as the intimacy coordinator for Poor Things, intimacy coordinators ideally streamline production.
Especially on a TV set and even on a film set, time is very precious and we need to do things quickly. And I think sometimes people worry that the role of an intimacy coordinator will slow things down. But if a lot of our work is done in prep, so we talk a lot with actors and directors beforehand just to ensure that when we get to set, things happen very smoothly and very quickly.
Now going back to the example in The Idol, this is only showing what it might be like if it's the actor's idea to show or do more. That's arguably why everyone seems so annoyed about this 48-hour window. Like, if she wants to do it, it's her body, it's her choice, and it's a valid argument, right? But what if it's the director's choice? Case in point, the 1972 romance Last Tango in Paris. The physical scenes between Marlon Brando, around 48 at the time, and his co-star Maria Schneider, 19 at the time, were a big part of the film, so much so that it was slapped with an NC-17 rating. I don't even think they had NC-17 back then. I think it was actually just X.
There's some butter in the kitchen.
And one infamous scene involved Brando's character using a stick of butter to, he's put it in a different place where it's not supposed to go, and she's not into it. Director Bernardo Bertolucci later admitted in an interview that the idea to use butter was a last-minute idea discussed between himself and Brando, like that morning, but Schneider was intentionally left in the dark.
We didn't tell her that there was that detail of the butter used as a lubricant. I still feel very guilty for that.
Do you regret the fact that you have shot the scene like you did?
No, but I feel guilty. I feel guilty, but I do not regret. To make movies sometime, to obtain something, I think that you have to be completely free. I didn't want Maria to act her humiliation, her rage. I wanted Maria to feel, not to act, the rage and the humiliation. Then she hated me for all life.
Now, I want to be careful when talking about the details of all this, but it's important. I just want to get everything right. When Bertolucci made these comments, it caused a huge wave of backlash because, as he described it, people assumed that it was the entire scene that was improvised without Schneider's knowledge. Bertolucci later clarified in a statement, quote, "Maria knew everything because she had read it in the script where it was described. The only novelty was the idea of the butter." This seems to conflict with Maria's account as she described in a 2007 interview for the Daily Mail. Quote, "That scene wasn't in the original script. The truth is, it was Marlon who came up with the idea. They only told me about it before we had to film the scene, and I was so angry. I should have called my agent or had my lawyer come to the set because you can't force someone to do something that isn't in the script. But at the time, I didn't know that." This seems to be confirmed in My Cousin Maria Schneider, a posthumous memoir about Schneider written by her cousin, Vanessa Schneider. The entire scene in question is described secondhand as completely improvisational. But to add to the confusion, there was this movie based on the memoir, Being Maria, and despite obviously being a story that's firmly on Maria's side here, telling her story, the written dialogue between Bertolucci and Schneider in the aftermath of the scene suggests that it was the addition of the butter that she had the problem with.
Je t'avais dit que je voulais que ce soit intense.
Pas comme ça. Pas le meurtre.
Et qu'est-ce que ça change?
Et tout. Ça change tout.
I'm getting lost in the weeds here, but whether or not it was the entire scene or just the butter element that was improvised, like either way, if this film was made today, none of this would fly. So let's take each situation, right? On one hand, if Bertolucci wanted to add an entirely new sex scene, that would definitely require an update to not just Schneider's nudity and or simulated sex writer, but Brando's as well. And if they agreed to it, that 48-hour buffer period would still apply. But even if it was just the butter, right, that's still an extra detail. And in this case, it's a literal prop that was not specifically agreed upon beforehand. It seems like it would, at the very least, require an update to the actor's simulated sex writer. The character of Maria Schneider in Being Maria is technically correct when she said that the butter, quote, changes everything. It adds way more aggression to the scene and to Brando's character, it introduces way more humiliation to Schneider's character, and it unfortunately humiliated and traumatized Schneider herself for years after the film's release. This whole awful ordeal is only one documented example, and there's probably a whole lot more out there that we've never heard about. This, in my opinion, is enough to convince me that even if there was a slight possibility that the involvement of intimacy coordinators would slow down production, if they can prevent something like this from happening, including all of the confusion he said, she said stuff surrounding it, it's not only worth it from an ethical standpoint, but it could actually protect the entire studio behind the production as well. And that's where the argument of things being too expensive actually falls apart too. That's another criticism. As Alicia Rodis put in a 2020 interview for Medium, quote, "It will save time and money. It can help prevent lawsuits. It will create more consistency. Issues are addressed in advance, so everyone's on the same page." But the third criticism I've seen brought up a lot, and I'll admit that it's the most convincing, is that choreographing a sex scene beat by beat would ruin spontaneity. Now, taking sex scenes off the table for a second, there's an argument to be made for wanting to explore a scene and build it organically and just be in the moment. And this is such an old debate, right? It's one side of an ongoing debate that roots itself in an apocryphal story about an exchange between Dustin Hoffman and Laurence Olivier on the set of Marathon Man. As the legend goes, Hoffman's character was supposed to appear exhausted, so he decided to forego sleep to appear genuinely tired, to which Olivier quipped, "My dear boy, why don't you just try acting?" In reality, Hoffman admitted the exchange was distorted by Time magazine, but it doesn't matter if it's not true. It still stands as a perfect representation of two different acting approaches, classical versus immersion via method acting. Now, I could see that same argument applied to sex scenes. Before getting into all this research on intimacy coordinators, my initial thoughts were, as long as you communicate with your actor and discuss boundaries, broadly speaking, then when the cameras are rolling, anything you do inside of those boundaries would be fine, right? Well, apparently, intimacy coordinators like Alicia Rodis are fully supportive of this method. It's okay if actors want to do that.
What do you say to an actor who says that intimacy choreography stifles their impulses?
Because I have gotten this before from actors, like, oh, no, I don't want to choreograph, I don't want to set it up, I want to go on impulse. I'm like, you know what? Cool. I'm down. I'm in. All that we need to do is set a container. And if we want to find the choreography organically, because we're going to have to repeat it eventually, regardless of it, it's like you can't go on an impulse to do something different every single time. We've got to shoot it at multiple angles.
Right.
So we're going to land on something. If you want to find that organically without us planning it out ahead of time, I'm here for it. But we got to set a container. So where are we not going? What's the playing space?
To support this argument, again, let's just take another look at a bad example. What happens if you're given no choreography? What if there was a 3-camera setup, so it didn't matter if what you did matched whatever, it just cameras kept rolling, they just kept going, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel of when the director's gonna say cut? And what if the director just threw you into the scene and you figure it out? Just ask Adele Exarchopoulos and Léa Seydoux about their experience shooting a graphic sex scene for 10 days with a final running time of nearly 7 minutes in Abdelatif Kashish's romantic drama, Blue is the Warmest Color. I said a lot of French names in one sentence, and, well, it's done, so I'm not going back. Kashish pushed for authenticity in the film overall, so when it came to any sex scenes, he didn't choreograph anything or discuss with the actresses what they were comfortable with, whether it was what they were doing or what they didn't want to show. Now, Kashish, he sounds like a real knucklehead, this guy. He pushed for authenticity above all and did so many takes, like across the board. It didn't even matter if it was a sex scene or not. Like that scene where they first see each other, it's like a love at first sight thing. It was like 100 takes. So anyway, when it came to the sex scenes, he didn't choreograph anything or discuss with the actresses what they were comfortable with. In early interviews, the actresses weren't shy about how awkward everything felt. Exarchopoulos said, quote, "I didn't know Léa in the beginning, and during the first sex scene, I was a little bit ashamed to touch her where I thought I wanted, because he didn't tell us what to do. You're free, but at the same time, you're embarrassed because I didn't really know her that well." In a separate interview, Seydoux said, quote, "Of course it was humiliating sometimes. I was feeling like a prostitute. Of course, he uses that sometimes. He was using 3 cameras, and when you have to fake your for 6 hours, I can't say that it was nothing."
Y a pas de pardon. Je veux plus te voir, je veux plus jamais voir ta tête. D'accord? Je veux plus jamais te voir. Tu prends tes affaires et tu te casses.
And this guy, man, Kashish, he went for realism with a fight scene, too, insisting that the actresses actually hit each other over and over again. Seydoux said, quote, "Kashish shot with 3 cameras, so the fight scene was a 1-hour continuous take. And during the shooting, I had to push her out of a glass door and scream, 'Now go away!' And Adele slapped the door and cut herself and was bleeding everywhere and crying with her nose running. And then after, Kashish said, 'No, we're not finished. We're doing it again.'" Now, in the end, the movie is actually great. Like, it's a beautiful love story, which makes this whole thing even more complex. Like, if it weren't for the director's insistence on realism, would it have worked as well as it did? Would it have gotten as much attention, right? If there wasn't this graphic, almost 7-minute long sex scene in this movie that looked incredibly authentic, would it have gotten as much attention, winning the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which was awarded to the director and the 2 leads? That's normally something that doesn't happen, but the judges panel decided to do it after watching their incredible work in the film. After hearing their comments, Kashish lashed out in an interview stating, quote, if Seydoux lived such a bad experience, why did she come to Cannes, try on robes and jewelry all day? Is she an actress or an artist of the red carpet?" This guy's a real piece of work, man.
I mean, this guy was a real jerk.
Second of all, I don't want to speak for the actresses. I don't know how they felt about it, but I can imagine that if they went through something that was super uncomfortable for over 5 months, and then it turned out that it did really well, then I don't blame them for wanting to squeeze every last ounce of joy and success out of it. Like, if you went through something like that, hey, yeah, I'd like to be rewarded for that. I don't know, man. At the end of the day, it's all just pretend, right? If you're a director who's putting your actors in any position that makes them feel unsafe or embarrassed for the sake of art, maybe you should just rethink what you're doing. What do I know? I'm not an artist. So, intimacy coordinators. I honestly don't see any downside. And I'll end this by saying that I truly wish I had had an intimacy coordinator to talk to when I was an inexperienced 20-year-old actor who had to perform a sex scene with Jennifer Holland in American Pie Presents The Book of Love. And judging from the hour of time I sat with her in silence before we shot it, I'm sure she would have wanted one too. My head was filled with questions that I felt embarrassed to ask anyone in the room. Questions that have undoubtedly gone through the heads of thousands of actors for decades. Like, how do you shoot these things? What are we going to be doing exactly? Where can I touch her? Where shouldn't I touch her? Who decides where and when and how I touch her? Should I be talking to her? Should I be talking to the director? How does she feel about all this? Is she going to be completely nude? Am I going to walk into a room and see a naked woman? Do I need to be mentally prepared for that? Am I mentally prepared for that? Should I not look at her before we shoot? When should I not look at her? When should I look at her? If I look at her, is that going to offend her? Is it going to offend people around her and me? And how many people are going to be watching? How many people are we talking about in this room? Is it going to be as many people as I usually see? Is it going to be not just a lot? Is it just going to be us and the director? Is that weird? How should we kiss? Should we kiss at all? Is a little tongue okay? Is she okay with that? Am I okay with that?
I have no idea what I am doing.
And just like that, without an intimacy coordinator, we're back to the same insane amount of questions dealing with boundaries, comfort, movement, specific acts. It is overwhelming. Now, if you're a seasoned actor who's done this plenty of times, sure, you've been around the block. You might know the answer to every one of these questions. But if you're a young woman who's afraid to speak up for fear of making too much trouble and jeopardizing her career, or if you're a young man and you're worried about saying or doing something that could be misconstrued as perverted or subtly aggressive, it makes perfect sense to have an extra person there who can put everybody at ease. Because when actors know exactly what they're doing, then they can stop worrying about themselves and start acting. The way I see it, intimacy coordinators didn't invent boundaries. They just stopped pretending everyone magically knew where they were.
Kissing in the blue light all night. Tommy Screws may pop for the fall.